6 months ago, I conducted a personal experiment that changed my entire understanding of self-control. For 1 week, I removed every source of easy entertainment from my life. No phone except for essential calls. No internet except for work. No music, no podcasts, no audiobooks, no streaming services. Just me, my thoughts, and whatever tasks needed to be done. The first 2 days were absolutely miserable. I felt anxious, irritable, constantly reaching for stimulation that wasn't there. But by day 3, something remarkable started happening. Tasks I'd been procrastinating on for months suddenly felt doable. I sat down and worked on them without the usual resistance. Decisions I'd been avoiding became clear. I had difficult conversations I'd been putting off. By the end of that week, I'd accomplished more meaningful work and personal growth than I had in the previous 3 months combined. But here's what really shocked me. It wasn't just about productivity. My entire relationship with myself had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt like I was actually in control of my own mind. I could decide to do something and then just do it without this massive internal battle. I could sit with uncomfortable emotions without needing to escape them. I could delay gratification without it feeling like torture. I felt powerful in a way I hadn't felt since I was a teenager before smartphones existed. That's when I realized that boredom isn't just about resetting your dopamine or improving your focus. Boredom is the secret training ground for self-mastery. Let me explain what I mean by self-mastery. It's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. Self-mastery is the ability to choose your actions based on your values and long-term goals, rather than your immediate impulses and feelings. It's being able to do what you know you should do, even when you don't feel like doing it. It's controlling your attention instead of having your attention controlled by whatever grabs it. It's the capacity to delay gratification, tolerate discomfort, and persist through difficulty. It's the difference between being a passive reactor to your circumstances and an active creator of your life. And every single person I've ever met who has genuine self-mastery has one thing in common. They have a high tolerance for boredom and discomfort. Think about it. Every act of self-control requires you to tolerate discomfort. You want to eat junk food, but you eat healthy food instead. You want to stay in bed, but you get up and exercise instead. You want to scroll your phone, but you work on your project instead. You want to avoid a difficult conversation, but you have it anyway. In every case, you're choosing temporary discomfort over temporary pleasure. You're betting that the long-term benefit is worth the short-term cost. But here's the problem. If you spend most of your time avoiding even minor discomfort by constantly seeking stimulation, you're systematically destroying your capacity for self-control. You're training yourself that discomfort is intolerable. You're weakening the exact mental muscle you need to build the life you want. Your brain has what neuroscientists call executive function. This is the set of cognitive processes that allow you to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, manage multiple tasks, and regulate your behavior. Executive function is controlled primarily by your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain that makes you human. And here's the crucial part. Executive function is like a muscle. It gets stronger when you use it and weaker when you don't. Every time you resist an impulse, you're strengthening it. Every time you give in to an impulse, you're weakening it. And constant stimulation is the equivalent of never exercising this muscle. You're letting it atrophy. When you grab your phone every time you feel a twinge of boredom, you're not just wasting time. You're training your brain that impulses must be obeyed immediately. You're conditioning yourself to be controlled by whatever feeling arises. You're practicing weakness, and this practice transfers to everything else in your life. If you can't resist the urge to check your phone for 5 minutes, how are you going to resist the urge to eat junk food? If you can't tolerate the boredom of waiting in line without stimulation, how are you going to tolerate the discomfort of a difficult workout? If you can't sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes, how are you going to sit with the anxiety of starting a business or the vulnerability of a deep relationship? The secret benefit of boredom is that it's a training ground for self-control. Every moment you spend being bored without seeking stimulation, you're doing a repetition in the gym of self-mastery. You're strengthening your prefrontal cortex. You're expanding your capacity to tolerate discomfort. You're building the foundational skill that determines whether you'll achieve your goals or stay stuck in patterns of immediate gratification. Let me tell you about David. He came to me completely frustrated with himself. He had clear goals. He wanted to get in shape, build a business, improve his relationships. He knew exactly what he needed to do. He'd read all the books, taken courses, hired coaches, but he couldn't make himself do the work consistently. He'd start strong, last a few days, then fall back into old patterns. He'd beat himself up about it, call himself lazy and undisciplined, then try again with the same results. When I asked him to describe his typical day, a pattern became clear. Every spare moment was filled with stimulation. Podcasts while getting ready, phone while eating breakfast, music during commute, social media between tasks, Netflix after work. He never spent a single minute unstimulated. His brain literally never had to do anything hard or boring. I gave him an assignment that seemed absurd to him. Spend 30 minutes every morning sitting in a chair doing absolutely nothing. No phone, no book, no music, nothing. Just sit there with your thoughts. He looked at me like I was crazy. How is that going to help me build my business? But he agreed to try for 1 week. The first morning was torture. He lasted 7 minutes before he gave up. The second morning, he made it to 12 minutes. By day 5, he could do the full 30 minutes. And something interesting started happening. The rest of his day was different. He could focus on work without constantly checking his phone. He could exercise without needing a podcast to distract him. He could have conversations without his mind wandering. After 3 weeks of this practice, David sent me a message that changed how I think about boredom. He said the boring sitting practice wasn't just helping him focus. It was teaching him that he could be in control of his own mind. For years, he'd felt like a passenger in his own life, constantly reacting to impulses and feelings he couldn't control. But sitting with boredom every morning was proving to him that he could choose to do something uncomfortable and stick with it. That capability was transferring to everything else. If he could sit with boredom for 30 minutes, he could sit with the discomfort of a hard workout. If he could resist the urge to grab his phone for 30 minutes, he could resist the urge to eat junk food. The boring practice was the foundation. Everything else became easier once that foundation was strong. This is what most people don't understand about self-mastery. They think it's about motivation or discipline or willpower. But those are just symptoms. The real foundation is your capacity to tolerate discomfort without immediately seeking relief. And that capacity is built through practice. Boredom is the safest, lowest stakes environment to practice this skill. When you're bored, nothing bad is actually happening. You're just uncomfortable. It's the perfect training ground. Ancient philosophers understood this intuitively. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort as a core part of their philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the world as Roman emperor, would regularly sleep on the floor, fast, wear uncomfortable clothing, all to practice being uncomfortable. He understood that if he couldn't control his response to minor physical discomfort, he wouldn't be able to control his response to major challenges. Buddhist monks sit in meditation for hours specifically to practice being with discomfort without reacting. They're not trying to achieve some mystical state. They're training the fundamental skill of self-control, the ability to experience something and not immediately react to it. Modern neuroscience confirms what these ancient traditions knew. Dr. Judson Brewer at Brown University studies the neuroscience of self-control and addiction. His research shows that the key to breaking any compulsive behavior is learning to tolerate the discomfort of the urge without acting on it. The urge itself is just a sensation in your body. It rises, peaks, and falls like a wave. Most people act on the urge at the first hint of discomfort. But if you can learn to just observe the urge without acting, it passes. And every time you do this, you weaken the neural pathway between trigger and behavior. You're literally rewiring your brain. Boredom gives you dozens of opportunities every day to practice this exact skill. You feel the urge to check your phone. Instead of immediately acting on it, you observe it. You notice the physical sensations, the restlessness, the slight anxiety, the impulse to reach for your pocket, and you just sit with it. You watch it. You let it be there without acting on it. After a minute or two, it fades. You've just done 1 repetition of self-control. Do this 10 times a day, and you've done 10 reps. Do it every day for a month, and you've done 300 reps. That's how you build the muscle of self-mastery. Here's what happens to your brain when you consistently practice being bored. Your prefrontal cortex, which controls executive function and self-regulation, becomes more active and develops stronger connections. Brain imaging studies show that people who meditate regularly, which is essentially practiced boredom, have thicker prefrontal cortexes. They've literally grown more brain tissue in the region responsible for self-control. Meanwhile, the regions associated with impulsive behavior and emotional reactivity become less active. Your brain is reorganizing itself around the practice of observation and choice rather than reaction and impulse. But there's something even more profound happening. When you practice being bored, you're changing your identity. You're proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who can do uncomfortable things. Every time you sit with boredom instead of reaching for stimulation, you're gathering evidence that you're in control. This evidence accumulates. Your self-concept shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who can't control their impulses and start seeing yourself as someone who can. And this shift in identity makes every other behavior change easier. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, talks about identity-based behavior change. The most effective way to change your behavior isn't to focus on what you want to achieve. It's to focus on who you want to become. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to be. When you practice being bored, you're voting for the identity of someone who has self-control, someone who isn't controlled by impulses, someone who can do hard things. And as these votes accumulate, your identity shifts, and behavior that used to require massive willpower becomes natural expression of who you are. Michelle discovered this through her morning practice. She'd struggled with emotional eating for decades. Every time she felt stressed or anxious, she'd eat. She'd tried every diet, every program, every approach. Nothing worked because she was trying to control the behavior without building the underlying capacity. I suggested she start with 10 minutes of sitting with boredom every morning. Just 10 minutes of experiencing discomfort without trying to fix it. She thought it was stupid, but agreed to try. After 2 months of this practice, something clicked. She was having a stressful day at work and felt the familiar urge to go to the break room and eat junk food. But instead of immediately acting on it, she paused. She observed the urge. She noticed the anxiety in her chest, the tension in her shoulders, the mental narrative that eating would make her feel better. And she just watched it. The urge didn't go away immediately, but it became manageable. She didn't eat. For the first time in years, she felt the urge and didn't act on it. The morning boredom practice had trained her nervous system that urges don't have to be obeyed. She'd built the capacity to sit with discomfort. And that capacity transferred from boredom to food to every other area of her life. This is the secret power of boredom. It's a leverage point. It's the one practice that makes every other practice easier. If you can learn to be bored without seeking stimulation, you can learn to be anxious without seeking comfort food. You can learn to be tired without hitting snooze. You can learn to be uncertain without seeking constant reassurance. You can learn to be uncomfortable without quitting. The skill is the same. Experiencing something difficult and choosing your response rather than reacting automatically. Think about the people you admire, the ones who've built something significant, the ones who are in great shape, the ones who have deep relationships, the ones who've mastered a craft. What do they have in common? It's not intelligence or talent or privilege, though those help. It's the capacity to do boring, difficult things consistently over long periods of time. They can sit down and work on something tedious for hours. They can do the same workout routine for months. They can have the same difficult conversation over and over. They can stick with something when it's not fun anymore. This capacity is self-mastery, and it's built in the moments of boredom when they choose not to seek easy stimulation. Let me give you a practical framework for using boredom to reprogram your brain for self-mastery. Start with what I call the boredom practice. Every morning, before you do anything else, sit in a chair for 10 minutes and do nothing. No phone, no book, no music, no meditation app. Just sit. Your mind will wander. Thoughts will come. Emotions will arise. Urges will appear. Your only job is to notice them without acting on them. You're not trying to clear your mind. You're training your capacity to experience discomfort without reacting. The first few days will be hard. Your brain will hate this. It will give you every excuse to stop. It's boring. It's a waste of time. You have important things to do. This is stupid. Notice those thoughts and keep sitting. You're teaching your brain that it doesn't run the show. You do. By day 7, it will be easier. By day 30, it will feel natural. And more importantly, you'll notice that self-control in other areas of your life has become easier. You'll be able to resist impulses that used to control you. You'll be able to start tasks you used to procrastinate on. You'll feel a sense of agency and power you haven't felt in years. Second, throughout your day, deliberately create moments of boredom. Wait in line without pulling out your phone. Eat a meal without any entertainment. Take a walk without a podcast. Drive without music. Do dishes without distraction. Every one of these moments is an opportunity to strengthen your self-control muscle. You're practicing the gap between impulse and action. You feel the urge to grab your phone. You notice it. You don't act on it. the urge passes. You've done a rep. String together enough reps, and you become someone who has genuine self-mastery. Third, when you're working on something important and you feel the urge to escape to stimulation, pause. Don't immediately resist the urge and don't immediately give in to it. Just pause for 30 seconds. Notice what you're feeling. Boredom, frustration, anxiety, uncertainty, name it. Then ask yourself, what would someone with self-mastery do right now? Not what do I feel like doing, but what would the person I want to become do? And then do that thing. You're creating space between stimulus and response. You're exercising choice. This is the essence of self-mastery. Robert practiced this framework for 90 days and his life transformed. He'd been stuck in the same job for 8 years, wanting to transition into a new field but unable to make himself do the work required. The studying was boring. The networking was uncomfortable. The applications were tedious. Every time he'd start, he'd last a few days and quit. But after implementing the boredom practice, something shifted. He could sit down and study boring material for 2 hours without reaching for his phone. He could go to networking events and tolerate the awkwardness without escaping. He could submit application after application despite the discomfort of potential rejection. 6 months later, he had a new job in his desired field. Not because the work became less boring or uncomfortable, but because he'd built the capacity to do boring, uncomfortable things anyway. This is what self-mastery gives you. Freedom. Not freedom from discomfort, but freedom in discomfort. The freedom to choose your path even when it's hard. The freedom to pursue your goals even when it's boring. The freedom to become who you want to become instead of staying who you've always been. And this freedom is built one moment of boredom at a time. The technology companies have stolen this from most people. They've trained entire generations that every moment of discomfort must be immediately medicated with stimulation. They've created a world where boredom is treated as an emergency that requires instant relief. And in doing so, they've created a population that lacks self-control. People who know what they should do but can't make themselves do it. People who have dreams but no capacity to pursue them. People who feel controlled by their impulses and powerless to change. This isn't an accident. It's the business model. The less self-control you have, the more you use their products. They win when you can't resist the urge to scroll. But you have a choice. You can reclaim your capacity for self-mastery. You can rebuild your ability to control your own attention and behavior. You can become someone who does what they decide to do regardless of how they feel. The path is simple but not easy. Embrace boredom. Sit with discomfort. Practice the gap between urge and action. Do this consistently and your brain will reprogram itself. The neural pathways of impulsive behavior will weaken. The neural pathways of self-control will strengthen. Your identity will shift from reactive to proactive, from controlled to in control, from stuck to free. This is the secret benefit of boredom that nobody talks about. It's not just about focus or creativity or mental health, though those are all real benefits. The deepest benefit is that boredom is the training ground where you become someone who has genuine power over their own mind and behavior. Someone who can choose their path and walk it regardless of difficulty. Someone who has self-mastery. Start tomorrow. 10 minutes of sitting with boredom. Build from there. Your most powerful self is waiting on the other side of discomfort.